Hello, Gomez here from the LAN channel. Today I'm actually just going to go through a few different concepts of like different builds I've been trying to do with the new cards. Obviously before the set goes out, this idea is just basically to give you a few different concepts that I'm currently thinking of. These will probably get changed and you probably will see videos on these decks coming out once the cards get released, but these are just a few little things before the cards actually do get released, like a few different ideas. I just thought I'd share them with you in case you guys had anything, as well as like to get your feedback on what kind of decks you're thinking about as well. So let's get into this. Okay, so this idea is called the Puffcap Foundry, and the idea of it is to work with the new landmark, obviously, in PNC, which forces your opponents to draw with Teemo. It's actually a fairly odd Teemo deck because we're kind of going down the very old strategy of using Teemo with Sejuani, because obviously, once you get enough mushrooms in your opponent's deck, forcing them to draw into those mushrooms, doing damage to themselves. If Sejuani's on the board, you're then going to make it basically frostbite their entire side, of which, like, obviously, they can then play onto that board, but anything they already had on that board is basically useless to them, and that's the kind of idea that we're working with here. So let's get into this beat by beat. So obviously we've got our thermal beams there just because of the fact that if I go up I can actually do the thing. Okay, it's not working, don't worry about it. Thermal, you know what thermal does. So which is just as removal, so we're running that for our removal. We've actually got like a couple of the elixir of irons to help Teemo survive his sustainability at the beginning, because obviously he's only got one health. Let's go hard. There's so many different things that can take out one damage, that having that. It also can help keep your peddlers alive, as well as putting more spells into or putting more mushrooms in off of the peddlers. So the idea of this deck is that obviously as a secondary kind of condition, we've actually got, so the elusive cat is there to hit in early, and we actually do run the ballistic bot as well. Now the reasons for these is because ballistic bot, number one, is a really early card that you can get out, which is forcing you to create an ignition, which is doing one damage to your opponent's core for one spell man, doing damage to your opponent, which is going to help level Sejuani. Also, once Sejuani's leveled, it's a way of activating it. Obviously you should be hitting them off of the puff caps, but this is another way of doing it. But also all of those cards which are being created from like all the puff caps, because obviously puff caps are like created through like cards like this and whatnot. I did consider running the other puff cap guy, but sadly I couldn't find room in my deck, for the two cost one who creates. Admittedly, that's what I mean. These decks are just concepts. I just want to state again, these decks are just concepts. There's definitely ways of building around them that you can improve them and make them a lot better. These are just the concepts that I'm going in. So by the time that you see a video on this channel about this deck, it might have slightly changed and whatnot, because obviously these are not tested. I haven't actually got to play these cards which are on the meta and knowing what's happening. So these are just merely concepts and crazy ideas, and that's why any feedback or whatnot, please leave down in the comment section down below. So yeah, so obviously you're creating those cards. So the elusive is in here again to hit into core and help with Sejuani, but also like all the cards are going to be adding on to that damage. You're going to be doing more and more damage, and you're forcing them down, and then the puff cap should hopefully finish them off. Because you're going to be doing so much damage to them, I also am running shared spoils in this deck just for a little bit of draw, as well as like, I know that obviously we're getting significant draw coming off of the landmark, but this is also another way of just like drawing into things. It also works really well with Peddler. We've got different spells and whatnot that are working off of Peddler. I've actually put this in the deck, Iterative Improvement, because it can be used so well in multiple situations. Okay, right. Number one, it can be used to make more Peddlers. If you get a Peddler out, you could instantly put another Peddler who's going to be a 4/4 Peddler on the board. You could actually do it with just the guy who creates puff caps to be able to make. But like, it's such a good card to work in this deck because it can force it like that. You could also make another investigator, so that you could then off of the investigator force them to draw more, so they're drawing more into the shrooms. So it's a very diverse card, which allows you to go down many different avenues depending on what you've got. So if you've already got a lot of mushrooms in their deck and you've got an investigator, copy the investigator, force them to draw more into those shrooms and more into their death. If you haven't got a lot of mushrooms in their deck, copy the peddler, get a 4/4 peddler on the board and start yet again creating more mushrooms to go in their deck. This is actually a solid card for PNZ that works in so many different situations to be able to create more value, because you're knowing what you're creating. This also can be used to create something off of your opponent's side if there's something on your opponent's side that you want, but mostly in this deck you are trying to force it onto the things that you want. Rummage, obviously, there's like you draw in Jared. I mean, these are standard, but these are spells yet again that can just work really well with the with the Peddler. There's also calculated creations, just in case you don't draw the Ballistic Bot or the Cat. This gives you another way of doing it. There's only like very few circumstances that you really want to make the Armored Gearhead, because admittedly, like it's a good card because it's a quick attack card, but most of the time you're going to either be creating the Ballistic Bot or the Stealth Cat. Let's face it, those are the ones that you're going to be making out of that. But this is like the concept of this deck, and obviously then Sejuani ends up closing the game by literally continuously frostbiting, and then you're forcing them to draw because the Foundry's forcing them to draw. Your Investigator forces them to draw. There's also a Progress Day in this deck, just one copy just to help you draw if needed. Technically that might end up it depends on how good this landmark works, or how much landmark removal gets played, depending on whether or not Progress Day might end up getting dropped from this list, because like you might just draw way too much. But until we get to see it in practice, that's the kind of deck that I'm running at this moment in time. This deck is called Perfect Recall. The idea of it is it's a Yasuo deck working with the recalls hit. Now this deck is gonna see a lot of different changes. I can definitely see myself going in and maybe even cutting Yasuo altogether, I can definitely see myself changing this deck. Your main purpose of this deck is that once the monastery is on the board, it's always creating obviously the sanctuaries and hand, which is a 1-cost recall. The idea is to get your Legionnaire General onto the field and then attack forward with him or use him for defense, and then recall him and replay him, because by recalling him you're actually going to be buffing him so he can defend, take damage, and then come back, and then come out stronger, and then you go into your attack turn, and then again if he gets attacked, then you just recall him back and put him out. So he's a really good thing. There is also Go Hard, which you can use on Go Get It, not Go Hard. Go Get It, which you can use yet again on top of him, because the idea here is that if you recall him, the one stays there, but actually his summon effect happens twice. So once he's on the board, so you actually double his ability by playing Go Hard. Obviously he will be the ephemeral one, but it will still double his ability, and then you get to play a 0-cost one in your hand, and then so you end up having some big boys here. So that's the idea. This is the secret plan behind this deck. As I said, it might end up cutting Yasuo altogether, but that is the plan of this deck, is just to mostly work off of Legionnaire General. There is a singular wheel in here, more for banter than anything, but if you've got Yasuo on the board and then you use this and he's leveled up, then ha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha, send everything back. It's a great move. There is also, to get value off of the fact that this is going to be continuously giving you a recall, Jeweled Protector is in here, because you could recall him and then just give that free buff continuously to something if you really wanted to. There is also Keeper of the Masks. You could put them on the board, recall them, put them back out again to keep doing that one buff on your attack turn. Is always a good move. There's also the Highwayman. So yeah, again with the Highwayman, you could just keep recalling that guy. So you can basically be building a board which is allowing you to defend yourself for the late game, because obviously the late game is going to be you then going in with your Legionnaire General. So by continuously just recalling that guy, the other guy he creates still stays on the board, and you can actually keep creating a board which at least allows you to defend. You could also put Jeweled Protector on top of this, so that who he summons is going to have the same stats as him, and you can do some nice little moves there, as well as the fact that you could actually recall him to replay him, because if you have a Green Clay Duo on the board, then he's going to be something. So you're actually going to be building up that elusive damage, and all of these recalls are massively helping with the don't let the fluffy tails fool you. So this in this deck as a starting, which if you can get this out, is going to be amazing. Obviously there's still a lot of other things like retreat, and there's a few other recall moves and stun moves to work with Yasuo. Stun moves, that's the reason why Ravenous Flock is in this deck. But yeah, so this is how this, but I do feel like this deck might end up seeing some changes. The reason why Might is in this deck is to potentially grant or give Overwhelm to this guy if you've got him up high enough that he's going to be doing enough damage that he basically basically presents lethal, or by giving it yet again to a Legionnaire General to be able to do that damage in that he's going to be getting overwhelmed. Like that's the main reason why the Might's in here, is to just give that overwhelm for the turn that could potentially be the swaying factor in this in this matchup. So I've also got Shadow, which is Shadow Assassin. Shadow Assassin, you could actually either play or keep recalling Shadow Assassin to give yourself more draw. So it's actually the purpose of potential more draw, or which create image. I mean, the main thing that you need to always remember with this kind of landmark is because it's recalling, it is going to be like loss of tempo, right? Because you're going to be like recalling stuff to replay it on the board. So you're continuously having to use that mana cost to replay things onto the board, and then obviously that means that you're making things leave the board and then leaving yourself vulnerable, which is kind of why the Highwayman is in this deck, is so that he's leaving something behind, and he can continuously leave something behind the more times that you bring him back and replay him. And I said, like, he kind of combos really well with either the Green Glade Jewel, or if you put a Jewel Protector on top of him, as I said, then I know that when he recalls he's going to lose that buff, but if you can do that, and then a guy attacks in, or you can attack him with both of them, if he survives, recalling him back and then getting more value off of him, like as he would have been damaged from the attack, or potentially just jeweling him back up again and putting him out. There's so many different ways, but I feel like this deck is going to need a lot of change ups, but for an initial concept going into the cards as they are, I think it's quite a fun plan. Race to the Peak. Race to the Peak is a using Targon's Peak in this deck. The idea here is obviously you get a little bit of early game going on with the trolls, but most of your late game. So as you can see up here, you've got 14 cards which are in the 7+ category, because the idea is that you want to be high rolling as quickly as possible, get that Targon's Peak out, and then all of these big value cards, potentially getting them down to costing 0, so that you can just outvalue your opponent. It is going to be giving your opponent also which get like a 0 cost card, but you need to hope that yours are obviously going to be the bigger value, because theirs is going to probably be a more better statted deck like that. So this whole idea is that the trolls are going to be in there because you've got so many 8 cost cards. That really helps. Divergent Path, because you need to be drawing that landmark as quickly as possible. So the reason why this is in here is that it's another way of drawing out. If you don't get that landmark in your hand at the start, this is a way of at least drawing it out. It also can destroy other people's landmarks if landmarks become a big thing. But yeah, this is just like you're going full in on this plan. Keeper to kind of just at least keep you alive, like so Timekeeper to just like heal yourself. Stones is more in here just in case you don't find this and you don't find the peak, to kind of like try to get you up to that high value cards that you've got in there. Yet again, working off this one, this is just a more stabilizing card, because it can keep regenerating itself, so it can be put into attacks and then regenerate itself. Avalanche obviously counter towards aggro and things like that, so the kind of, yet again, just to get you through until you can find Targon's Peak, or like get into those bits, which also there's like 1 copy of Star Shape in here, yet again, just to heal the core more than anything else. Trundle, because you've got so many 8+ cards, that why not play Trundle. There is also an actual copy of Icequake in here, because if you can get the copy of Icequake down to 0, that is free damage to all your opponent's stuff. Your trolls should survive this, apart from the first troll. Your trolls will survive the Icequake, which is quite nice, as well as the fact that, yeah, again, it's just something to help counter aggro. I know that it's Trundle's spell, but at the same point, if you haven't already got Trundle on the board, this can really help to do that. It does stairs. I put 1 copy of this in the deck just because it's a nice little remove, which could do 2 damage, and I know that it's obliterate landmarks, so it says all landmarks, so it's probably going to get rid of your own landmark, so you need to be careful with this. Potentially this could just be removed, because admittedly obliterating or doing 2 damage to all other minions is not really going to help you in this thing. So I might actually I just immediately put it in because I just thought, oh, it's a high value card, put it in, but technically that could quite easily be traded out for the big guy who regenerates, who's got challenge, the 7/7 I think it is, who I'd probably trade it in for that. This was just when I was initially building, but I could see changing it out. You've got Mind Splitter, and you've got which are like this which are the voices, so that if you don't draw this, just that ability, or even if you do hit, which even if Targon's Peak does hit the voices of the old ones, you can then instantly start ramping up and then going into your latest stuff, as well as that obviously you can get ASOL for 0 cost. She Who Wanders, such a big card to get for 0 cost if you can play this really early game. The 10/10 regeneration, it's just so much value. I mean, potentially even like you might even get rid of It Who Stares to throw in 3 Wanders, because that ability of hitting that would be actually devastating. There is a Feel the Rush in here so that you can get ASOL and Trundle on the board with that. And then 1 copy of The Skies Descend, because I do apologize if I didn't, because it's really hard because I've basically had to zoom in really much on this screen, and so like just moving here, it's hard to see whether or not you guys can see what's going on. But yeah, The Skies Descend, just to get that for 0 cost potentially off of Targon's Peak is just such a devastating thing that I just had to do it. So all of these high value things, potentially getting them for 0 cost is devastating. So yeah, so you got your early game to try and sustain you, Targon's Peak drops, and then the late game is devastating. This time we are working off of the Scargrounds one, which obviously the best way of using Scargrounds, so this deck is called the Crimson Scars. The best way of working off of it is with Crimson Vladimir. So we've got Brom and we've got Vlad in this deck. The idea here is that we've got all of these things which once damage is done to them, they start buffing up. So basically you got this in here, because once damage is done, if the Scar field is on the board, every single time it grants +1 attack and tough. Obviously the tough only happens the one time, but the +1 attack is helping. So obviously with this is actually going up +4 with Scargrounds on the board, like in terms of damage. We've got this out here just because obviously every point of damage is going to be doing damage into your enemy's Nexus. Got Death Lotus because, yeah, again, so basically, so the idea, I would explain more why Death Lotus is in this deck in a moment. Demolitionist is out there, which is doing that damage. Transfusion, Troll Chant is just for at the beginning bit, but once this is on the board, like a Troll Chant should be, I mean, I guess if you need to help yourself with a trade, Troll Chant can really help, but at this, I'm honestly trying to get this so that I can get the things so you guys can see what's going on. Yeah. Crimson, which is Crimson Courier, just because obviously it's just so much value in this deck with the amount of damage that you're doing. Ember Maiden. Now, Ember Maiden, bear in mind, yeah, that once Scar Mothers is on the board, Ember Maiden stays alive, right? Because Scar Mothers is granting tough, and that does 1 damage to all. So anything that's on the board that gets given tough, now, at the beginning of every round, gets hit by Ember Maiden, it doesn't do anything to them, in terms of it doesn't kill them, it's hurting your Nexus and it's hurting your opponent's Nexus, but on the plus side, everyone is going up by +1 at the beginning of your round. Everyone is going up by +1 with Ember Maiden on the board, as well as the fact that, so this is going up +4 every single time that hits. This is obviously just doing damage to your enemies, which are enemies core. This guy is actually going up. This guy is actually going up +4 as well. Which is such a good combo of having all of those things. You're basically just outvaluing your opponent in so many different ways, and then obviously your overwhelming off of Scar Mothers is yet again going up +4. With that on the board, so just devastating us, as well as the fact that Vladimir, once he levels, his 1 damage isn't doing anything to the people because they're all tough, but it is still draining from your enemy's Nexus, and so it is buffing these guys yet again. +4, like once you go for the attack forward, +4, +4, +4, like it is so much value coming off of those, and then obviously creating things in hand, doing damage to the enemy Nexus. There's so many things which work really well in this deck. This is going to be a lot of fun because you're increasing all of their damages. That's the reason why I've put the Assessor in this deck, is for draw purposes, because at a certain point all of these things should hopefully be above 5 because of like they're getting the buff off of Scargrounds, that literally Assessor is going to be a really good draw in the end. And yeah, again, that's the reason why Death Lotus is in this deck. Death Lotus is in this deck is because once you've got a big enough board, yet again, +4, like so many things get buffed, and obviously you're doing damage to your opponent right? Because if your opponent starts switching like either on their battling turn or on their attack turn or on their defensive turn is taking damage, that then opens the door to this guy dropping on the board, and literally he is stunning all the enemies who have been damaged by Death Lotus, and so you're just attacking forward and reaping the benefits. I did consider putting Guillotine in this deck because of like that, but I ended up deciding that there was nothing I wanted to cut for it, and then obviously Brom's in this deck because just making so many Poros potentially coming out of that, just like it's just so much value coming off of all of these things that it just becomes devastating. So I do love the idea of this deck, but please let me know what you think down in the description down below if there's a different way that you've built this, because this I feel is going to actually be a really powerful deck potentially. So potentially you might drop this to put in some, which I don't know what else you'd put in, but my mind, which like obviously that's the most droppable card in this deck. Don't know what you'd put in for it, but potentially I could just see like so much, like potentially some mites, because obviously these are going to start going, as I said, +4, like literally might or Kato for another overwhelm effect might actually be really funny as well. But there's so many different ways I can see this deck being built, but I like this as a baseline of this is where this goes. Anyway, the Haunted Plaza. So Haunted Plaza is working with Grand Plaza, obviously, and this deck is actually all about leveling Lucian and Callista, bearing in mind that obviously what's going to be happening here is that things like Haunted Relic are actually going to be creating, if Grand Plazas on the board, are actually going to be creating 3 2/2s with challenge. Right? Obviously they're going to be dying immediately at the end of the turn, but both of those things do amazingness for helping Lucian level and for helping Callista level. So there is that, as well as the fact that obviously if you then rally, then you get the ability to, of course, use Remembrance off of those things dying to then throw something else on the board. Like I love the idea of this. Also, there's so many things. Grizzled Ranger, the idea of having that with Plaza is just so amazing, because he's gonna drop as a 4/2 with challenge, kill somebody, and then you can attack forward with the bear, which will be a 4/5. What I remember, because it's a 3/4, isn't it? So a 4/5 from the Badger Bear that comes out of this. So there is just so many different things in this deck that I do like as well. So obviously Senna just to help with Lucian. You could even use the Butcher onto Cursed Keeper to obviously then get those things and then potentially get it with +1 and challenge. You could be forcing down your opponent's resources and then just attacking forward. You might want to put a rally in this deck. Obviously, if you've got Lucian out already, then he's going to be doing a lot of rallying if you level him up. But also, if you've got 2 of them, like 1 in hand, then that's already going to be a relentless pursuit. So that might be a consideration to put in this deck. I actually put a Harrowing in this deck just in case all the things die. It's like my alternate win condition that you could just throw Harrowing out, but I definitely can see different ways of building this. I put a Redeemer in there for draw, as well as obviously you getting draw off of Stalking Shadows and Glimpse. Sharp Sight is more in there just to help defend yourself and whatnot, but the idea of this is a very quick aggro deck of trying to level Lucian and Callista as quickly as as quickly as possible, and with Grand Plaza forcing, because if you throw Haunted Relic out, as I said, with the challenge, as many means as they've got on the board, you can challenge them away from Lucian, so that Lucian is doing that double damage directly into their core. That's the plan here, is that you're using Grand Plaza to grant that challenge to move things away from either your leveled up Senna or your leveled up Lucian, so that the damage is going through. That's the plan. Whether or not this, I still think this deck might need some tweaking and whatnot, but I do like the idea of this one. But please let me know. So this is the Haunted Plaza. Let me know what you think. So this one is a Reforge Rally. So Reforge Rally again is actually a Riven deck that is working with working with Lucian, working with the Rally potential, as well as the Overwhelm potential, right? So the idea here is that you've got the stuff in for Reforge. Once you rally and get the attack token back, Riven should Reforge again, giving you, so you should be able to get to that very quickly and then just use that blade to put on top of Lucian or put on top of Senna, because the overwhelm on top of double damage is going to be really funny, as well as the fact that I do also have the blade in here, and Kato's also giving overwhelm. Like, this whole idea is an overwhelm Riven Rally deck. This is the idea that's going on here. There's definitely better ways of building this, but this is the way that I've decided to go. So you've got Transfusion and Sharp Sight as your kind of ways of protecting Lucian from certain removals, or protecting Riven from certain removals. Obviously, you kind of want Senna to die with Lucian on the board so that you can get that level up, and then just the rallies that can happen off of that are just going to be amazingly funny, because your opponent's basically not going to want to go into an attack because they don't want you to defend forward with anything that would then activate Lucian to then attack forward, which it brings yourself with. So we've got Might in here yet again to be able to throw on top of her, but also you can put that on top of Riven, because once she levels up, that is +6 to Riven on top of that. So there's so many different things that I think are funny in this deck. But yeah, so this one is called Reforge Rally. I just wanted to really make a Riven deck that kind of worked with Rally, and there's many different ways of doing this. You could just work it with Garen and do like a straightforward deck. I decided to go with an Overwhelm Rally deck, but there is definitely other ways of running this as well. So Relentless Pursuit in there for some more Rally. These things, which like you got all of the effects that work with Reforge in there, so the weapons hilt, the Rune Weaver, everything along those lines, and then just buff cards. And yeah, I've also thrown the Challenge Me in here, because giving them the Blade of the Exile is going to be funny, because it is going to give them quick attack +2, and just that ability of just challenging things out and then still being able to overwhelm, I think is amazing. So yeah. I think this is actually a really funny deck, but please let me know yet again what you think. The last deck that I have for you today is actually called Perfect Creation, and the idea of this deck is that it is a Victor with Heimer deck, and obviously this is all about pursuit of perfection. So this is the creating perfection deck, where I'm working it with Targon. The idea here is that you've got your removal, you've got your Jerry that works with Rummage, as well as the fact that obviously it just works as a spell on its own. You've got your Shape, which is your Spacey Sketcher, to work yet again off of that, or whatever you need to be able to make more cards. The Spell Thief, more for banter, as well as the fact that obviously you can use it off of Heimer to create a 1 cost. This is in here as well, just to be able to create another card, because obviously you're working with Victor to be able to create cards, as well as with Heimer. The amazing thing about this deck is it actually has multiple ways of getting through. So you've either got your Perfection, which you can use this on top of, so you can make more copies of Perfection, which is a 1-cost spell. One cost minion who's going to be a 31/31 with Overwhelm. You could use this also, which could just, if you need to copy something from your opponent's side of the field. The amazing thing about this deck, as well as with Calculated Creations, if you make the cat, then you could then use did I actually put a copy of the cat in on its own, or did I not? I don't think I did, which is a shame. I should have done. But yeah, so basically you can make a copy of which you can have the cat, and then if you use Shards of the Mountain, that buff is going to make that elusive go insane. The other thing that you can do with Shards of the Mountain, and if the cat's on the board, is you can actually put those things onto the elusive. But if you've got what's his face? What? He's got to be in there. I swear I put a copy of him in this deck. Why am I not seeing him right now? Why am I not seeing? I swear to God, I put a... I mean, okay, my deck list apparently did not update what I put onto it, but basically, I put a, what's his face? Assembly Bot in this deck, and Assembly Bot is a 3 cost, so potentially like you'd get rid of, I don't know what you get rid of right now, but basically Assembly Bot, that is another idea. So I feel like I will put in the description below, there will be links to all of these different decks, but my one thing I would say is put an Assembly Bot in this deck instead. I don't know where my Assembly Bot has gone. I might actually get rid of the Spring Guardian for Assembly Bot, mostly because the fact that he is creating creation a card which I can use, but there's not many things I'm going to use it on. But yeah, no, assembly bot is definitely what you want in this deck, because that is another win condition that is so funny because of the amount of spells you're creating. So anyway, let's keep going on here. So obviously this works as a really good tempo move because they have to do something about, and if they don't, you're doing 3 damage and stealing a spell. Get this in here for a little bit of health as well as draw. That I've already said, like its main purpose. Mountain Goat, yeah, again, it attacks in its great tempo, as well as the fact that it's creating a gem which you can either discard or play to be able to use with Victor. Power Cascade, a little bit of draw and damage. Trail of Evidence, just it's a solid move. It's a creation card which is creating something for 0 cost, but also it works very well with Heimer to be able to, once you've got Heimer on the board, using that to create a 2 cost bot. There's like, so many things that works really well with, as well as obviously Flash works really well with Heimer, as well as it's a creation card. Creation card yet again. I said I might end up dropping this for having the bot. This is just in here just as a potential landmark removal more than it is doing the free damage. If you need to do the free damage, do the free damage, but it's more in there as landmark removal if it's necessary. A little bit of draw here as well. Star shaping, and obviously which you've got the submersible, because you're going to be definitely playing 10 different cards very quickly, making that submarine be potentially lethal itself, and then Star, which it Sunburst as removal, and then throwing in 1 copy of Progress Day. You might not end up needing Progress Day because there is significant draw elsewhere, as well as the fact that Heimer already becomes that. So potentially dropping Progress Day and dropping the Spring Guardian just to put in 2 copies of the bot, which is the assembly bot, I think honestly would be an amazing like change up there, and it would be an amazing, definitely it forces them to have to do something, especially with the different things of creation, as well as the fact that obviously I said, like, if you use Shards of the Mounting, the buffs that can happen to both that elusive cat created by this and the actual bot himself is going to be amazingly funny. Obviously remember that once Heimer hits this board, the amount of spells that you've got are going to convert into bots, and the more bots that you play, obviously the more different spell bots that you play is adding towards perfection. And just bearing in mind yet again that their creation things, they're helping level up Victor, as well as it's helping augment Victor. There's so many different things in this deck that synergize so well that this is actually going to be a really funny deck, and I can't wait to play it. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed your time here. I hope that this has given you some concepts of different things. If you've gone in blankly with no idea what the hell to play, this might give you some concepts to start off with. But please, in the comment section down below, let me know what decks you're thinking of running. Put a description, and if so, put a description, put a link if you don't know this is out of cards. Put a link to your deck, or just the basic summary of what your deck is doing, and basically I'm going to choose my favorite deck, and whoever does my favorite deck in that, I'm going to be giving you I'm going to be giving you a set of Twisted Fate cards. This is the giveaway for YouTube for Twisted Fate cards. Let me know in the description down below what deck you're thinking of running, a basic description of it, or link a copy of your out of cards deck, just with a brief explanation, and whatever I think is an amazing deck, I will be sending you a copy of these cards. So that is the YouTube giveaway for this. Bear in mind, shameless plug time, Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram. If you haven't already caught me on these things, I'm giving away sets on Twitter every Thursday stream, but I do stream on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So if you want to come catch the action live, please feel free to. As well as the fact that there is also the Discord link down below if you want to join the Discord. And other than that, I just honestly hope that this is such an amazing new set of cards that are coming. This is so much fun. There's so many videos ahead. I hope you stick with this channel. If you haven't already subscribed, why not hit that subscribe button? Thank you all so much for the support, and until next time, bye. From flash of brilliance that could save me. Save me! That doesn't save me. Okay, is there anything from you? Save me. That doesn't save me. Okay. Get rid of this and get rid of this. Find something that can save me.